Welcome back to Small Changes, Big Shifts. I'm Dr. Michelle Robin. I'm here with a couple of my favorites, of course, with Bayleigh Soza, my co-host, as well as Dr. Sean, and he'll let him say his last name. He's only worked together for about, Sean, 15 years, 17
15
years?
years. Yeah. 15 years. It's pronounced Cailteux. It's spelled completely different. So I don't blame you for not having it mastered after 15 years. Maybe 15 more years, you'll have it. You'll have it down.
Well, I feel like you're always Dr. Sean to me. And first of all, to our listeners, we are focusing on men's health. And I'm bringing to you truly one of my favorite guys. I want to brag on him a little bit. Last year, he came to me and after Memorial Day, and he was telling me about how he did this Murph over Memorial Day. And I was like, what's a Murph? And he told me about what a Murph is, and I'll let him tell you about it as well. And I said, well, I want to do that for my 16th birthday. So he has been coaching me, walking beside me, and we actually did it together on my 16th birthday. So Dr. Sean, not only are you a chiropractor, you're a father of 5, you're a devout Catholic, you are a bright light wherever you go. And mostly you're just a good friend to me and to your wellness connection. So thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Sure. Well, I'm happy to be here and appreciate getting to spend this time with you two, talking about health and talking about men's health. Kudos to you because you've done 3 MRFs now. You did the one on your birthday. You did one at the end of April. So 2 in 1 month. And then we just did one on Wednesday together. So it's very impressive. I'm kind of blown away by young men, personal trainers, fitness aficionados whom I know that have never done a MRF before. And here you sit having done 3 of them after 60. That's tremendous. So good on you. And I'm glad to be a part of that fun little journey.
Well, it's fun. I know our clients are loving it. You know, when we met 16 years ago or so at a seminar, we were talking about extremities. And I want to just extremities and just chiropractic in general. Why are you a chiropractor and why are you passionate about it?
Sure. That's a really good question. And I know we only have 30 minutes and we could take up the whole 30 minutes half answering this question. Long story would be I was a chiropractor because I didn't know what I wanted to be. And I somehow went from major to major to major and ended up in something in the health and fitness world because that's what I was attracted to as a young man. I enjoyed sports. I enjoyed exercise. I enjoyed just active things. I thought I wanted to be a physical therapist because that was the only outlet that I knew that existed. I knew nothing about chiropractic, but I did one internship with a physical therapist over the course of a summer. And to be fair to physical therapy, I don't think it was a fair look. It was enough to kind of turn me off and have me looking for a different profession to fulfill my desires. And I landed on chiropractic, but I had no idea, even the first day walking into chiropractic school, I had no idea what I was in for. I didn't know anything about innate intelligence, a term we'll kind of define here in a minute. I didn't know anything about really holistic health. I don't even know that I'd heard that term before. And so I found myself, early on in my chiropractic education, feeling very blessed because I just sort of felt like, God maybe led me into this profession where he thought I would be a good fit and he knew it aligned with sort of my core values. And I think he probably saw it as a way he could use me as an instrument to bring his compassion, his love to our patients. I kind of went into it blind, but it's a profession that I was just having this conversation with one of my kids the other day. It's just a profession that I feel like I fall in love with like more and more each year. So feel very blessed to be a chiropractor. I don't know. Can't say that, I had this illness or this ailment and a doctor fixed me or that my, 5 generations of chiropractors behind me. Mine's kind of maybe a random story of luck and grace and, his guidance. So.
Yeah, I say all the time, I don't believe in coincidences, and honestly, our stories are the same. That's what brought me to your wellness connection was some doors that just shut and guided me a different path. And similarly, I was thinking PT was originally the path that I was going. And I know now, reflecting back on my journey, those opportunities came up to open the door that I needed to walk through, but the other ones didn't open up for the right reasons. And I know for sure we are, 1, so blessed to have you at your wellness connection, but then 2, the way that you have poured into your clients. You are living in your calling and everybody who is around you is lucky to experience that. And I think oftentimes, for men specifically, and as we enter June, talking about men's health this month, they don't think about it at that deeper level, like the way that you do, as far as calling and stepping into what you think your purpose is. As a husband and a father and, healthcare provider, what do you think some of the biggest challenges men are facing, or what is maybe blocking them from stepping into their calling at that deeper level?
I think in talking about health, right, it's good to define terms. So, when we talk about health as chiropractors, the three of us know this, and probably many of our listeners know this too. But when we're speaking about health, we're not just talking about the absence of sickness, right? Health is so much more than that. To be symptom-free doesn't necessarily mean that a person is healthy. Health is something more abundant, we could say, or even proactive. So to look at poverty, or we should say, well, I'm not poor, so therefore I must be rich, right? Like, well, no, you actually have to possess something in order to be truly wealthy. And similarly, we wouldn't say, well, I'm without symptoms and therefore I'm healthy. Well, you actually need to possess something, right? So there's a chiropractor slash scientist that I'm a big fan of, and I know Michelle, you are too, Dr. James Chestnut, and he defines health as his little equation that he writes is like capital H health equals S times P divided by D times T. And those letters mean the S is sufficiency and the P is purity. So when we do things that provide sufficiency, when we maybe eat things, breathe things, drink things, do things that are kind of more pure and good for us, the higher that H is going to be, right? Because those are on the top of the equation. But on the bottom of the equation, we've got deficiency and toxicity. That's what D and T stand for. So the more deficient we are in things and the more toxic our environment, whether that's nutritional or emotional, the lower our health is. So, we look into those 4 quadrants of well-being, and we could park in each one of those, but I'll just pick physical because I think that's one that people can understand a little bit more. So someone who is physically deficient, well, that means they're just not moving their body. That same Dr. Chestnut would say movement is an essential nutrient. And if you don't get enough movement every day, then you're going to suffer for that. So, if you're deficient in the amount of exercise that you get, both in resistance training or aerobic or flexibility training, then your physical health is going to suffer. If you are sufficient and you're doing good movements for your body, meaning you're being mindful of your posture and your mechanics and that kind of a thing, well, then your health is going to increase. And that's just simply in the physical quadrant. You can go into the nutritional quadrant and talk about purity and toxicity there as well. But yeah, generally speaking, maybe there's a lack of education, sure, but then also it's a lot of times the world's made it easier for us to just pick the things that maybe aren't as good for us. Maybe we're deficient in movement because we're spending way too much time on our phones or in front of the television, or maybe we're eating things because we're addicted to certain chemicals. And there's just a lot of reasons that I think men's health suffers. I think in a little bit, we can talk more about what men can do in order to feel inspired to make the changes that a lot of them, I think, know that they probably need to make.
I'm glad you brought up Dr. Chestnut because he helped me in so many ways, several years ago when I took his CCWP and the Chiropractic Wellness Practitioner Certification Program. And I think for our listeners, they may not know that chiropractic is a fairly small profession, and we have different specialties where we go to school and get continuing education or other degrees in, whether it's acupuncture, rehab. It could be low back, right? One of your passions is low back. And I remember you coming on and you really helped me with helping treat low backs at another level. So for our listeners, explain some of the different modalities that chiropractors use. And when you think about purity and sufficiency and thinking well and moving well and eating well, how important is the chiropractic piece of that from a neurology perspective?
So from a neurological perspective, most people come to a chiropractor because they want to get out of pain. There's such a greater benefit to being under chiropractic care than simply pain relief. But we can park on pain relief for a minute because a lot of people speak that language. There is a direct competition for attention to our brain between something called nociceptors and proprioceptors. So nociceptors is just a fancy word that means pain sensors. So when you hit your thumb with a hammer, you immediately get a sharp feeling of pain, and that travels up your nervous system into your brain very, very, very quickly. Now, the innate thing that a person would do would be to shake their hand, maybe say a few choice words, but rub that thumb, just anything to excite the competing pathway, which is the proprioceptors. Proprioceptors are little kind of joint receptors that respond to deep pressure or change in position. So whenever if your buddy slugs you in the shoulder and you just kind of, hey man, you rub that, like that's your body just kind of understanding, like if I rub this, then I won't feel it as much. And that's because the competition between your brain's attention, your brain can only, focus or pay attention to so much at one given time. So now chiropractic, a good chiropractic adjustment, it helps move and mobilize the joints in the spine. Now, joints elsewhere too. You can adjust knees, wrists, hands, feet, ankles. People are kind of surprised when I tell them that at times because there are joint receptors there as well. By creating movement in those joints, you're actually exciting those proprioceptors. And a lot of times you'll have someone get an immediate pain relief with a chiropractic adjustment, whether that was their neck pain or their low back pain or a foot pain or a wrist or a hand pain. And that's because of those competing pathways. So neurologically speaking, in a very simple way, you've got pain relief. Now, there are complete other avenues that we don't really have time for to explore, but that's just one small way, but very meaningful way that a chiropractic adjustment can have like an immediate result on a patient's sense of well-being.
On the topic of chiropractic care, I think one of the common misconceptions that I see is that you have to be in pain to come see a chiropractor, that there almost has to be a problem to solve in order for there to be a benefit to the care. And, we on this call and those of our listeners and who have been at your Wellness Connection know that there's so many benefits to preventative care. And I think as a society, it's one of the things we don't talk about enough is, the prevention side of things. It's something we're focused on here at your Wellness Connection and in the practice that you're building. What advice would you give to our listeners out there about the power of prevention?
Well, first, I would just advise anyone listening who isn't currently maybe having regular maintenance care with a chiropractor, with a massage therapist, with an acupuncturist to do so. It's highly beneficial, right? You don't want to wait until pain is kind of knocking at the door of your brain, saying, let me in. By then, the problem's already existed for a really long time. I guess I could just say I've treated a lot of patients who come in with, let's say, severe lower back pain. Now, generally, they've been ignoring warning signs for years, little symptoms that kind of get better or maybe get totally better for a long time. Better meaning their brain's just not screaming at them like, hey, there's a problem here, there's a problem here. If they would have paid attention to either of those messages sooner, or if they would have been doing proactive things for themselves sooner, then they probably could have caught their ailment before it needed more expensive and more long-term care. So maybe take the case of someone with a herniated disc. Sometimes a disc will herniate just in an instant. If you and I are moving a piano and I'm on the top stair and you're on the bottom stair and you step on something and slip, but in that instant, I just totally tore up my lower back. That's one thing, but a lot of times it's a slow deterioration, poor mechanics, lifting with your legs, getting in and out of a chair or getting in and out of a laying down position with improper mechanics that creates like a shearing force on the lower back. I'll try not to get too technical. Basically, it's the straw that broke the camel's back that sends them into the office. This disc herniation that they have was coming, and just because they didn't know what they didn't know. And so poor mechanics and maybe insufficient nutrition just landed them in a situation where, hopefully chiropractic can still help get them out of this. It's certainly a great first step before something more expensive and more invasive like a surgery. But to catch those things sooner or to educate people on what good mechanics and good lifting postures are before they tear up their lower back is obviously the best route.
Sean, you've been a chiropractor for, I want to say maybe 18 years, 17 years?
Yeah, 09 is when I'm coming up on, I guess this would be my 17th year as a chiropractor.
17th year. And I chuckle a little bit thinking about our journey together. And I think that, I get adjusted often. And I believe my perception was probably not true, but the story in my head was that you were like, man, you get a lot of care a long time ago. And I'm wondering, what would you tell your younger self now that you've been doing this profession for 17 years, plus you're a dad of 5 and rugby and MRFs and all the stuff
Sure.
you do? What would you tell yourself differently, your 25-year-old self?
It's probably a decade ago, you and I had this conversation. And I'd made some mention about the regularity with which you were getting adjusted, at least weekly, if not more at times. And I'm a bad patient sometimes, or at least I was when I was a bit younger, but here I sit as 43, and any of our listeners out there who are 43 or older, or, maybe can identify here, it's things don't heal as fast as they used to. And so certainly utilizing chiropractic, utilizing acupuncture, massage therapy, and some of the other passive modalities that we use at our office, and some of the excellent, physicians that we have there. I would tell my 25-year-old self to not let the little stuff go, because the little stuff becomes the big stuff. So yeah, just use good mechanics all the time. From something as simple as, like, if you're going to sit on the couch and read a book, just do it with good posture, as good as possible, right? Like, it seems like a small thing, but those little habits become ingrained. And then next thing you know, it's your low back or other parts of your body are just getting worse and worse. Better self-care. And even something as simple as hydration. Something I do now that I didn't do as a chiropractor 15 years ago is I track how much water I drink every day. I used to not think I really needed to, because I assumed I drank enough water. And just a small little tip, like drinking adequate amounts of water every single day, can make all the difference. So yeah, just being more mindful and being more proactive, practicing what I preach, probably better than I did when I was a young chiropractor who didn't feel like I needed as much care as I feel like I need nowadays.
You're trained as a chiropractor, you've taken Chestnut's class, you have definitely taken care of your spiritual health and your physical health. How has the quadrants of well-being influenced your journey?
I think understanding the quadrants helps me realize where my sufficiency and deficiency, or my purity and toxicity, are most neglected. I think when I was a younger man, I certainly hit the physical very hard, very mindful of the physical quadrant. And like I said, without being very mindful of the chemical quadrant, I'm on a journey just this year. It's a very fresh journey. And this, Michelle, some blood work at the beginning of the year exposed to me that I have a wheat sensitivity. I've always been of the mindset that, like, things like wheat and dairy, and they're a problem for everyone. We just all have a variety of maybe reactions to wheat. And I just always assumed wheat was fine. It didn't bother me. I didn't notice any difference. So I just had some general blood work done, and lo and behold, my IgG, which is sort of like long-term memory of how my body reacts to wheat intake, was off the chart. It should be lower than 0.1, and mine was in the 12.7 range or something like that. So currently on a gluten-free journey, and have been since January, and had some pretty noticeable changes from that. But that came from a guy who didn't pay a lot of attention to the chemical quadrant. I thought I was doing well if I ate some vegetables here and there, or, did a better job of drinking more water, took my, omega-3 fish oils and multivitamin, both of which are very good things to take. But understanding that there are quadrants helps me realize that myself, my patients, people that we care for, it's whole person. Men compartmentalize, I think, more than women. Women are better at just sort of seeing the whole picture. Men, we have this tendency to just, like, get in the weeds on, like, this particular thing. And I can't worry about this thing right now because I'm honed in on this. And when you understand that a whole person has these quadrants of well-being, it forces you to investigate into each of those quadrants and say, where can we make a small change here? Because it's all important. You cannot be the healthiest version of yourself if you're exercising like a maniac and doing really great and handling your physical quadrant, but you're completely ignoring your intellectual, emotional, kind of energetic quadrant, or your chemical quadrant. So yeah, it's important to understand the whole picture.
What I heard you say is really the quadrants allowed you to take it to a deeper and a personal level, because we do know almost the blanket statements of, like, yes, it's important to drink your water and take your supplements, and those things are good for you. But until you took that deeper dive into your own journey to really ask that question of, like, where can I improve from a quadrants of well-being perspective, is really where you start to get these next level answers and get to take that next step on your journey. And I think what was also really a big takeaway for me, and one of the reasons I love doing this show, is because, Dr. Robin asked that question of, like, what would you tell your younger self? Everybody's always like, oh, when I was 25. And it's like, that's how old I am. Like, I get to hear this advice from all of you guys right now. And really, truly, what it was, this idea, this mindset of like wishing you would have just started to implement some of the things that you know sooner. And I think that what's beautiful about that statement is, for my generation, is it's inspiring to say, okay, we hear this all the time. You hear it time and time and again. It doesn't matter if we interview people who are in the middle of their career, who are in rewirement, who are just at, in the peak of motherhood or parenthood at the same time that they're building their career. Their answer is always the same, is they just wish they would have started to implement the things that they would have known sooner. Just drink more water, get outside, spend time with people who inspire you, getting back to the basics. And so again, for my generation and our listeners out there who are hearing this today, you should want to start to implement that. And then to those who are in the older generations who are sitting there, it's never too late. And there's always an opportunity for you to start to live from this holistic and this whole person mindset. And especially to our men out there who wear so many hats, oftentimes don't give themselves the moment or the pause to say that I deserve this self-care. And Dr. Sean, to close out the show, I know you had mentioned earlier that we could dive a little bit deeper into the inspiration behind how you get that motivation for that self-care. And so as we close out, I just want to end with, you maybe are struggling with the how is it going to happen or when can it happen, but don't ever question the why, because you're always important. And you deserve to feel well from this holistic perspective. You deserve to feel well mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And you do have the resources within reach, oftentimes, if you just pause to see them. So, Dr. Sean, with that, I want to close it out with your advice.
Sure. No, thank you for that. That's you said it well. Yeah, if you're a husband, your wife needs you to show up as the best version of yourself. If you're a father, your kids need and want you to show up as the best version of yourself. And if you don't yet have a wife or children, your family, your community, the people who love you, your coworkers, your friends, they all want you to be the best version of yourself. So I think with men, it's easy to try to go it alone. I'm a big fan and have been for a while of men's group or just men sharpening other men. There's a verse in scripture that says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. So accountability, and just don't try the journey alone, right? If we could leave a link to my Your Wellness Connection email address, I'd say any guy who listens to this episode who is maybe interested in community, please feel free, reach out, and maybe we can get you plugged in so you don't have to try to go it alone.
Sean, first of all, I love you. I truly love you. Thank you for being such good energy, and you're just a good soul, and you kind of hold down the testosterone at Your Wellness Connection very, very well. So thank you. And thank you for offering to build community. It's been fun to watch the Strong at 60 Friday morning class have people from 30s, maybe Bayleigh came a little bit, to 75 coming, and then people doing MRFs and just excited about that. So thank you. And Bayleigh, you said it right. It's never too late. The window may shift. However, you could start drinking more water and measuring that. You can think, you know what? Maybe my diet's playing a role and I don't know yet. Or my mind, it does matter, and movement matters. So we are sending you lots of good energy. We want you to have a great week. I know it's Father's Day weekend coming up. And to all the fathers out there who are maybe fathers for a pet, or maybe they're uncles, maybe they're grandfathers, we're sending you lots of love. Continue to know that we value you, we appreciate you. And I take Sean up on his offer. He's a great dude to come hang out with and be inspired. So Bayleigh, another great show. Thanks for joining us on Small Changes, Big Shifts.